Hi, this is Mike Brown, owner of Death Wish Coffee Company. Welcome to Fueled by Deathcast.
I love Jeff, but sweet and high. Whoop, Mr. Motorama coffee.
Death Wish Coffee presents Fueled by Deathcast, the world's strongest podcast. Get ready, the show's about to begin.
Welcome to Fueled by Deathcast, everybody. This is episode 125, if you're keeping track at home. It is also season 3, episode 21. And as always, I am the incredible Jeff. And I'd love it if you took a second and followed me on social media. It's real easy to do. I am at Jeff Wish Coffee, and you can follow everything Fueled by Deathcast does on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Fueled by Deathcast, because we not only come out with this very podcast you're listening to every single Thursday with a very special guest, we also do a science mini episode every Sunday, which is available right here on Fueled by Deathcast, as well in full video and video clips on YouTube. And we've been doing a lot of new stuff over on Twitch. And if you don't know what Twitch is, Twitch started out as basically a space for video gamers to stream and to connect with other video gamers. But now it has become this wealth of amazing, awesome content, podcasts, talk shows, cooking shows, all sorts of stuff over there. So we're jumping in and just creating a bunch of fun stuff. We've started doing a show called Talking Death, where I run down and recap the final season of Game of Thrones with our very own content manager, Shannon Sweeney. And we also recapped the recent Avengers Endgame. And we also started a brand new show last week called We Have Issues, where I sit with customer service extraordinaire Mike Mullen, and we talk about some of our favorite comic books, because what's not to love about comic books? And we're going to be doing game streams and contests and giveaways and all sorts of stuff over on Twitch. So you're definitely going to want to go on over to Twitch, twitch.tv/deathwishcoffee. Subscribe to us over there. And you can follow everything we do, again, right here on Fueled by Deathcast. And all of it would be nothing without the voice of death himself, Brock Powell. BrockVox.com for all your voice acting needs. He's the voice actor on this show and 1,000 voices out there in the world. He is having an incredible year. He's doing so much in the world of voice acting, and it's so much fun to follow his journey. And it's real easy. You can follow him at BrockVox across all social media platforms and see the fun stuff he's getting into as a voice actor. I'm always just so interested in that industry, and it's really cool to be able to follow Brock as his career takes off. And I love him to death, and I'm so glad that he's a part of everything here at Fueled by Deathcast.
Secret code unlocked. Discount of death.
That's right. It's the secret code for listening and being a fan of Fueled by Deathcast. If you go over to deathwishcoffee.com, you can use the code discount of death for 12% off your order as a thank you for being a fan of this show. But if you are a fan of this show, you know I'd much rather you use Discount of Jeff. That's all one word, Discount of Jeff. It'll get you 12% off your order today, tomorrow, every single time you want to make a purchase on Death Wish Coffee. And that is all of our coffee products, our merchandise, whatever you see up there, 12% off. Just type in Discount of Jeff at checkout. I not only love making podcasts and podcast content, I love listening to podcasts. And we've got a bunch of friends here at Fueled by Deathcast who make their own content that I'd love for you guys to go check out too. First up, the voice of death himself, Brock Powell. He has a really funny podcast called Unpop Podcast. Him, Curtis, Austin, and a couple others get together and they basically give their unpopular opinions about some of today's most popular movies. The newest episode out is on Jordan Peele's Us. It's very good, very funny, and they actually unpack some stuff that I didn't think of when I first saw the movie. And also, if you didn't hear me say this last week, Austin has a standing bet listeners of that show. And for a single tweet, you could get some money directly from Austin's wallet sent to your door. And if you don't believe me, go listen to the recent episode of Unpop Podcast, and you can find out how you can literally get some money from Austin. It's that easy. It's crazy. Another friend of the show who's got an amazing podcast is Ricky Rahman. You might remember Ricky Rahman as hosting MTV's Headbangers Ball back when MTV used to play music videos. And he also was the co-owner and co-conspirator of the infamous Cathouse Club. And that broke some of the biggest names in rock and roll. Have you ever heard of a band called Guns N' Roses? Well, one of the coolest things about the Cathouse were there were no cameras allowed, and the stories and things that happened within those walls stayed within those walls until now. Ricky started his Cathouse Hollywood podcast, and every other week regales us with stories about what happened, what went down at the Cathouse. And it's my new favorite podcast. If you like rock and roll and you like hearing some crazy stories about the late 80s and early 90s right on the Sunset Strip there, this is the podcast for you. Tune in wherever podcasts are found. Finally, friend of the show and recent guest, actually, singer of Exodus, Zetro himself, Steve Souza. He has started a web series called Zetro's Toxic Vault. You can find it on YouTube, and he is hopped up on Death Wish Coffee and regaling stories from back in the day, stories on the road with Exodus, stories of today, and he has special guests on, and it is just another thing out there that if you like rock and roll stories, you like metal, you like to hear about what it's like to be in an iconic band, then this is the webcast for you. Tune in on YouTube, Zetro's Toxic Vault. This week's special guest is none other than Bob Thiele. Actually, Bob Thiele Jr. Bob Thiele Jr.'s father, Bob Thiele, was a very famous record producer and musician and artist cultivator, basically. Probably his biggest claim to fame is co-writing the song What a Wonderful World, which he gave to Louis Armstrong. But he worked with so many acts, so many big acts, so many incredible musicians throughout the years. And when Bob Thiele Jr. was a kid, he got to see the industry firsthand and really kind of like be immersed in this and meet some of these people. Like, I mean, as a kid, meeting Frank Zappa, incredible. And we talk about that on this week's episode. But we also talk about Bob's incredible career as a composer. He composed a lot of the music for Sons of Anarchy, won awards for it, including the theme song. Bob also composed the theme song for the American version of The Office. And if you're fans of The Office out there, you might remember the fictional garage band called the Scrantones that was featured in a few episodes. Well, that literally is the band that Bob put together to create some of the music on that hilarious sitcom, and was when they featured the band, Bob was part of it and was on a couple of those episodes. And we talk about that, and we talk about his journey in the music industry and what it's like today to work as a composer. One of my favorite conversations to date. I am so excited for you to hear this in full. So let's get right to it. Mugs up this week for this week's Death guest, Bob Thiele.
The Fueled by Death guest.
Yeah, let's just jump right in. I want to kind of start talking about what you're currently working on, and then we can kind of work our way back because you've had an incredible career. But currently, you are composing music for the Mayans MC show, right?
Yeah, I mean, currently, I'm not doing anything.
Nice.
Because we're on hiatus. I don't know if you're familiar with the Brian Eno's oblique strategies. Are you aware of those?
No.
It's a series of of small, not 3x5, but small cards, and you pick the card out each day or whenever if you're like looking for something. And I picked out a card recently, and it said, "Do nothing for as long as possible." So coincidentally, that's kind of what I've been doing.
I love it. I love it. Well, those are the best times, because sometimes they're few and far between, especially when
I'll be starting up. We're on hiatus, so I don't think I'll be, in the thick of it until probably, the middle of May is when we'll be back to work.
Excellent.
But I am sort of organizing, some themes and ideas that I might want to try out for season 2, but you never know until you get to the actual footage and you see if that idea worked that I came up with in February or not.
Right. And I kind of wanted to talk about that too. Like, you were the music supervisor on Sons of Anarchy, and now working on Mayans. Was it kind of like getting into your favorite pair of jeans again? Was it just a normal fit, or is it a completely different experience working on this show?
Well, it's actually both. The familiarity part is that you're working with a lot of the same people, and the just the environment is familiar. What's different is obviously the musical sensibility is going to be different. Mayans has a different, DNA, if you want to call it that. Right. But it is still the biker culture. But whereas Sons were in Northern California, the Mayans are in Southern California, on the border. So whereas Sons, it was a white, club, Mayans is a Hispanic Latino club. So the music has to reflect that, not just the source music, but the compositional music as well. The thematic, what I'm doing thematically is different. Although in the last episode of Mayans, there was a scene that the editors had temped in a piece of music that I had written for Sons of Anarchy. And it worked so well that I took the essence of the piece and then layered in some of the Mayan musical elements, tones, and textures that I've used. So it's this really kind of beautiful combination of the two,
Yeah.
And it's funnily enough, it didn't occur until the last episode. It wasn't like in episode 1 where I brought the musicality of Sons to the Mayans. It was actually in episode 10 where I found that sort of, where the two elements blended together.
And I was actually going to ask that question. Do you think that is going to happen more as the show progresses? Because even though these two camps really exist by themselves, it is the same universe. And musically speaking, do you think you're going to pull on anything that you were able to create from Sons for this? Like, you're going to do that more?
Well, your guess is as good as mine, really. you never know till you get there. But I imagine there will be some, some nods to the Sons, if for no other reason, and not to create a spoiler here. But, for those who didn't see Mayans, there is a twist at the end that brings the Sons, that actually brings Sam Crow back to the Mayans narrative.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that I've not read season 2 yet, but I'm sure that we're going to have to deal with, what's these opposing forces.
Yeah.
And the music would probably invite, those two elements, those two themes to come as one.
Oh, cool. And that kind of was another question I had was, what is the process like on a show like this? Like, you're on a break right now, and as this episode comes out, actually, you're going to be starting to working on season 2. Are you reading the next season basically along as they're starting to craft it, or are you waiting for them to shoot it before you actually start crafting music?
Well, yeah, I always get the script in advance, but maybe it's a week or 2 in advance. But really, and this is my method, I can't, I can't really create from the page. I have to create from picture. So that's why what I'm doing now, which is sorting through some possible ideas, themes, motifs, I won't know until I actually see picture and can lay picture against sound and music and say, well, that works, that doesn't work. I mean, a lot of times Kurt will will write into the script. And now, like as we did in the prior season, we did a version of Sweet Jane. We did a version of Say a Little Prayer. We did some songs. So when it actually is written into the script that, and now a version of Sweet Jane plays, I have a pretty good idea of where we're going to go with that. Mm-hmm. So I don't need to see picture on that. Oh. But at least in that, in that context, I know that there's a song. Yeah. And I know that what the voice will be and what the tone and the mood of the song will be.
And working on that kind of aesthetic, that's why I think it's so interesting what you do. It's not just taking like, a cop drama or a doctor drama or something and making the music for the scene and having it work. The music that you create for this show and also for Sons of Anarchy is its own character. It's not just the compositions, but it's also, the songs that you're taking and reworking and reimagining. And is that born out of a collaboration between you and Kurt? Is that always Kurt's idea in the script? Like, I'm going to do... the example I want to bring up is the incredible thing that you did with Bohemian Rhapsody in Sons of Anarchy. And, I think I had read when that came out that was Kurt's idea, right?
Yeah, Kurt's idea was, I want to do Bohemian Rhapsody for the first... for the first episode of season 7. That's all it said. It wasn't like, and I want it to be this, that, this, and the other thing. And I was just going like, holy shit.
Yeah.
This is like how, and honestly, that's one that, if we, and I'm just sort of guessing that we probably started shooting that in May or June. Mm-hmm. But he told me about that in February. And even though the script hadn't been written, he knew what he wanted to do. So I began the process in February, actually, because I had no idea, what we were going to do. And honestly, I don't even know how it came about. It was just, I mean, I must have worked on it on and off for like 3 months.
Wow.
It was like the idea, okay, well, what if I get, Jake from the White Buffalo? Okay, but then we go to this section. How am I going to get that? Oh, well, maybe if Audra May came in and sang that. Oh, well, what if we did this and Billy Valentine could sing that? So it was constantly evolving. And each time I would say, I would have an idea of like, this section will be Jake from Buffalo. I would get Jake in there, or I would do Jake's voice. I go, mama. And I would send it to Kurt and say, is this the vibe? He'd go, yeah. And then, when we get to the next section, it'd be like, oh, we'll get Frankie to sing this. And it really was pieced together. And then when I had all the elements, they were in separate places, I had to somehow now weave it so it was one coherent piece of music that could be played. And that was, that was luck.
Yeah,
luck. Yeah,
it's incredible, and I really do feel like these shows, like the music is a character. It really it adds another layer to the visual, to the acting, to the writing, to the the editing, and all that stuff. And I think it's incredible that like you have this. Ability is the wrong word. This opportunity to work on a show where someone like Kurt Sutter wants to work so closely with that. Right. I mean, it could be an instance where you're getting a note from a director or writer and being like, Bohemian Rhapsody, make it work, and then that's it. But like, it sounds like you guys are really collaborative.
It is. I mean, and it is Bohemian Rhapsody, make it work, but it becomes then. I have the freedom and the time, fortunately, because that took a lot of time to, just try. There's a lot of trial and error and something like that. it's going to be a lot easier when you do House of the Rising Sun,
Right.
because it's, it is one thing.
Yeah.
But Bohemian is, it's a symphony.
Yeah.
So, that invites somebody like Kurt to go like, well, what do you think? What do you think? Whereas House of the Rising Sun, you kind of like go like, here's the idea. And it's pretty much, you're going to get close because you've already had 3 or 4 seasons to know what works in the show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's sort of like, as in the beginning, we didn't know. Season 1, episode 1, I don't know. Let's see where we get, And by, episode 5, 6, 7, you start to like go, I think I know what the sound of the show is. And then by the end, when we did John the Revelator, it was kind of like, aha, these are the elements. There's this guitar, there's this acoustic, there's this slide guitar, there's that voice of Curtis or Jake. And then Audra May, that brought another side to it. So what it really is, it's like a painter who's got, here's the palette that we work with. And you do a lot of elimination when that comes to. You go like, no. This doesn't. I always remember when like major labels, would pitch, their bands. And they were really well produced and kind of slick, rock, not quite metal, but, hard rock recordings. And, they just had that sound of professionalism. And, they'd be pitching it to the show because, we did move the needle for a lot of bands and stuff like that. We could break bands. And I would listen to it and I go like, this has nothing to do with our show. Just because it's got like big guitars and a tempo and it's like that, it just sounds so slick.
Right.
And, Sons is everything but slick.
Yeah.
So it was really funny, but we'll give it to you for nothing. I'm like, no, that's not, that's not the factor that makes us decide it's not money. It's like, it's got to be like tonally, right.
Yeah. Oh, that's really awesome. And through working through all the seasons of Sons and now on to Mayans, I mean, you've worked composing and writing for TV before that, but I feel like these are much more of a different entity. Has it changed you as a musician and a composer?
Yeah, well, the truth is I haven't done that much writing for TV or film. A short bio is of myself is, I was a musician and a songwriter and a record producer. And the way that it was probably around the early aughts, the late 90s, the business was going through a shift. A lot of what I was comfortable with and successful with and familiar with, a lot of that music was no longer necessarily, a viable way to make a living.
Yeah.
It was sort of like the birth of boy bands and Britney Spears and pop. Suddenly pop music had become, there was a whole kind of, not even just such a method. It was like there was a paint by numbers kind of like aspect to pop music, even the rock music of that time. It just had this sound of like similarity. Everything sort of sounded the same to me. And I just couldn't do it anymore, and I thought, well, I got to get out of this business. And, I started doing some work around film and TV, but more as a musician or a producer for hire. When Kurt came to me and said, I'm doing this show, Sons of Anarchy, you want to be the music supervisor? And I was like, yeah, but I don't know whatever that means. Yeah, I've never been a music supervisor. And so he says, well, I've never been the showrunner before. So we really jumped into it together, both not knowing what we're doing. We were, there was no like how to.
Right.
Or if there was a how to, we weren't going to pay attention to that how to. And I think that's ultimately why Sons has a musical signature that's different, because neither of us had any conception of how to do it according to the rules. And what's funny is that, I basically was given a new career. Oh yeah, he's the guy who composes and supervises Sons. He's a music guy now in film and TV. But I'd start working on other projects here and there, and it was nothing like Sons. It was sort of like the music business again, where it was a paint by numbers. It was like, here's how we do it. We're not really interested in going, at it with a clear palette. We have a way to do this. And I was like, didn't I just like try and get away from that sort of thing? So that's why actually, in a weird way, I'm not doing anything, because I think my skill is not, if you want me to do a cop drama or a medical drama or a legal drama, I'm just not the guy for that.
Yeah.
There are people who do it really, really well. And truth be told, I don't think those shows necessarily have a musical, that there is a character to the music.
No.
The music tends to be like, okay, we need something to fill the space here. And I'm not really interested in doing that.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad you're not, because you're creating, again, something really unique and something amazing. On the other spectrum of that, though, speaking of your other body of work, when you were talking about, like, having, like, these jobs that aren't this and, like, kind of like a model, like here's your set path kind of thing, I have to ask, was that what the experience was like working with The Office?
No, well, that was different. That was very different. And that was in my transition time.
Okay.
That's when I was sort of leaving the music business and entering into this other world. The thing about The Office was, and that's another case of just like right place, right time. The creator of The Office, the American version, his daughter and my son were in school together. And I'm guessing, what was it, 2004, 2005? So the kids were pretty young. And, I saw Greg one day, Daniels, and he said, I got this theme song, but it just feels really thin, and I feel like it could be more. Do you think you could make something of it? And I listened to it. I said, yeah, sure. He says, okay, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, why don't we go into the studio? I'll get a couple of musicians together. We'll go in and we'll do it. When do you need it by? He says, well, the show's premiering in 2 weeks, so we need it. Yeah, I mean, that was Greg. And so we actually went in, I think, the next day and just recorded it. We recorded the theme, and, it was just another one of those, sort of magical things. When I saw him, and Greg and I are good friends, and, he was saying how he was doing an episode where he was going to take the it was called the Booze Cruise. And I said, hey, you should have a band on the boat. He said, great idea. Let's put a band on the boat. And so we actually went out on the boat, and that's when we became the Scrantones.
Which is hilarious.
And then we went to, we did Phyllis's wedding. And we did, I did a bunch of stuff with them, and we actually did this great project where we got a bunch of the actors to sing songs. I had Ed Helms did a version of Werewolves of Scranton, and Kate Flannery did, I forget what Kate did, but Melora Hardin did Loosen Up Your Buttons. And we did them all like a punk rock band from Scranton. We had like 10 songs. Craig Robinson, I think, did a couple of tunes. He did Creep and I'm in You, that Peter Frampton song. Anyway, it was really funny because we came in under the guise of like, we're a garage band in Scranton. We're essentially Scrantonicity.
Right.
Actually, Brian Baumgartner did a version of I Can't Stand Losing You, the Police song. But what was really funny was that everybody could sing except for Brian. He was the only one who couldn't sing. And I'm like, oh my God, we got to like make this guy sing. And it's just a fantastic thing. And sadly, you guys will probably never hear it because NBC was like, oh, we don't want this to come out. I mean, now I should just sneak it out there and see what happens. But
stranger things have happened.
I know. Maybe if I give it to the actors, they'll leak it.
I think that's a great idea.
So I don't know. I just, but
Yeah.
okay. So yeah. So that, but more, I think what happened with that, and maybe this is, a kind of a philosophical tale, but I knew that the road that I was on in the music business was not true to me. There was just something that had changed so much. And, I come from, a legacy, my
Yeah.
father, all that, and I just knew that I couldn't do something that wasn't true to me. I didn't want to be in the boy band business. I wasn't good at writing for Britney Spears. That wasn't my world. So I had to let go of that preconceived notion and trust that whatever was going to appear, and I'm probably getting a little metaphysical about this, but when you run into Greg Daniels on the playground, dropping your kid off from school, and he says something about, "Hey, I'm doing this show. It's The Office. You want to do the theme song?" That's an indication from, a higher source that stay on the path, because the path will keep revealing itself to you.
Yeah.
So, 2 years after Greg, I worked a bunch on this show, Boston Public. I did some stuff for the OC with Peter Gallagher, but these were just sort of like, here's some money to keep you going. Here's some stuff. But it was also great because Peter and I became friends, and, working on Boston Public, I got to be friendly with Rashida Jones and with Sharon Leal and all these great people. And eventually it led to Kurt and Sons of Anarchy, which really has been, my career ever since.
Yeah.
And, I don't jump too far out of my, little pool that works for me.
Yeah, well, and that's why I wanted to talk to you, because, I really think that your journey is inspiring because, like you've said a couple times, and for our listeners and viewers that might not know, you did start out in this music business, writing songs for other people. Like, you worked with Bonnie Raitt, Ray Charles, and all these people, and then the music business changed, and you had a choice. You could have just stayed in there and hated your day job and cashed your paycheck and created music that you didn't really feel, but you looked at it and, just like you said, were like, let's see where this path can take me, and we're open to that opportunity. And I think that's very inspiring, not just for you specifically, but for anybody looking to do something creative.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's why I prefaced the last comment with, this might sound a little esoteric or metaphysical, but in fact, it's whenever I sort of think that I should be doing something that somebody else is doing,
mm-hmm.
comparing myself in a way, going like, I can do that. But the I can do that is more of a mimic than a true expression of me. That's not true to my nature.
Yeah.
I don't know what my true nature is until I'm put into a place where I get to see it. See, if you had said to me when episode 1 of Sons started filming that by the end of this season, 13 episodes from now, you will have created Forever Young with Audra May and John the Revelator with Curtis, I would have been like, how the hell is that going to get there? That is so inconceivable to me because, first of all, I didn't know Audra. I had no idea of the Dylan song that Forever Young was that I was referencing. There's a much more popular version that everybody knows, but I was doing a version that Dylan had done as a demo before he really recorded the song. So it had a completely different feel. I guess what I'm saying is that you have to sort of be a beginner all the time. I was a beginner when I launched into Bohemian Rhapsody. Now, beginner not in the sense of like, what's an A chord, but a beginner in the sense that I don't really have a preconceived notion of what I'm going to do here. So you almost have to have the willingness to fail, to be willing to like blow it. And, that, that was hard for me to do when I was 25 or 35 or even 45, I think. You get to a point in your life where you go like, fuck it. It's really, that's it. Fuck it.
Yeah.
What am I going to fucking do? I've tried it your way. I'm done. I don't want to do it your way anymore. Not that I'm so sure my way is going to be the answer for you, but at least I won't be regretting that I sold out in order to make, because if I sell out, it's not going to succeed anyway. I remember one of the last things I did in the pop music, when I was there was a boy band and they liked this song that I had co-written with some friends. And the essence of the song to me was like, what if Bob Marley and Bill Withers got together with Bobby Womack and made a song?
Whoa.
And that's how I conceived the song. Now, when this song got in the hands of this boy band, by the time we were done with it, there was absolutely no trace of Bobby Womack, Bill Withers, or Bob Marley.
Right.
And I was like, and it became kind of a hit. And I was like, man, I just want to bury myself. I don't want any part of this. And that was like the revealing moment when I said, it's not that important. I'd rather, I'd rather pour coffee.
Yeah.
I'd be happier then.
Yeah. Well, again, I think it's a testament to your nature that you just were looking. You weren't complacent. You realized that, wait, this is eye opening. This is something that I'm not happy in this moment anymore. But that doesn't mean it's the end of the road. It just means the road's going to shift. You
have to have that faith, which is a really hard thing. I mean, I'm not saying that, hey, have faith and it'll all be okay. No, you have to have the faith. You have to be willing to fail. You have to be teachable. I think, the minute you sort of lock it in, okay, I got this. Mm-hmm. The minute you lock it in, you've lost the joy will disappear. There's something about just being teachable and open to, to a newness, to just surprising yourself. That really is what makes it all, what makes it all a really fantastic journey. I wish I'd learned that earlier, but I guess that's the case with most people is that, we flail through our, most of our early adult life trying to figure shit out and lock it in. And they go like, boy, that taught me what I don't want to do.
Yeah.
Now I know. It's like, these guys who go to graduate school, they become lawyers or financial guys, and they retire when they're 45 and whatever they've done with all this money. And then they're like, God, what the hell do I do now? And the ones who seem to get it together are the ones who start giving it away. The ones who go into charity or go into let's make the world a better place. You see that they create a second life for themselves doing these things with the money they've made.
Yeah. And that kind of leads me even farther back. I just wanted to know, where did the idea, when you were a child, I mean, again, for people who might not know, you do come from a legacy. Your father was, well-known music producer, as well as probably his biggest writing credit being, What a Wonderful World, co-writing that song. And you're immersed in this, you're around this, but where does it come into your head that I don't want to follow in his footsteps? I actually want to create. I want to write. I want to create the music. Was there a catalyst in your childhood where that happened, or?
Not really. I mean, I think I just had a natural affinity to music. I could pick things out on the piano. When I was 4 and 5, I could play, my grandmother loved Silent Night, so I could play it with one finger on the piano. I think what got me was, with a lot of people, my age, I just happen to have been born at the right time, is like, you're 8 or 9 years old and you see the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. You go like, wow, that sort of is going to make an impact. And then not too long after that, when I was in my late, very early teens, that whole San Francisco British blues, there was a real explosion in the world of rock music. And, I just, because of my father, and he was married to a woman who, my stepmother at the time published a music magazine called Jazz and Pop. And so, I was around the Fillmore East a lot, and I got to meet the Jefferson Airplane and Frank Zappa and Janis Joplin, and all these people were sort of coming in and out of my parents' life. So it was exciting, and that's where you want to go. I want a guitar, I want to start. First, I started playing the drums, and I lived in New York City, and, I'd have rehearsals, 20 blocks away from our apartment. I'd be like a 12-year-old kid pushing drums down the street going, taxi, taxi. They're not going to pick you up. So I said, nah, enough of this. I'm going to play the guitar. But it was just an amazing time to be alive and exposed. I was like an open book, and, you could just start writing in it. So, I was really, really, really fortunate because of my parents, to be exposed to that. But I just want to say that the other side of it was, I think, unknowingly, I had to go through a kind of, I'd just say ego leveling, in my 20s where, guess what? You're not entitled to any of this shit. You have to sort of work and find yourself. Just because you're born into this, that doesn't mean it's given to you.
Yeah.
And so it was like tough, man. I think in my late 20s, early 30s, it was really rough. I mean, I was parking cars for $5 an hour at one point in my early 30s, so, I paid my dues.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was sort of like, fuck,
Sure.
What kind of success is that when you're making $5 an hour? Or as my friend said, no, actually after taxes, you're making $4.66.
That's the truth. But yeah, like you said, you have to find your own voice, but you were exposed to so much that obviously helped you out too. And as a side note and as a fan, I'd be sad at myself if I didn't ask. You said you got to meet Frank Zappa. What was that? What was he like?
He was like a normal guy,
No, don't tell me that.
No. I mean, it wasn't like, we spent a long time talking to each other.
Right.
But, it was really weird. I don't know if you saw the picture of me with Zappa, but we were my dad had taken me to the Bahamas there was a music business conference down there. Mm-hmm. These are in the days of like long before South by Southwest or any shit like that. It was probably like, 100 people maybe, who were professionals in the music business. And, they were having a conference down there. And I was by the pool and Zappa was in his Speedo. And, I was introduced to him by my stepmother and father, and he was like really nice. And we took a picture, and we're both giving the peace sign to the camera. I was a huge fan. I mean, absolutely free, and we're only in it for the money. I mean, my God, those were two of my favorite albums.
Yeah.
And I was much more tuned into that Zappa's sardonic wit, and the musicality that was always shifting. I think when Frank became more like the muso, and there was like George Duke and all this kind of like, playing, that wasn't so much my thing. But, absolutely free. Brown Shoes Don't Make It. Those records were incredible. Yeah. So, so I knew that I was like, I knew how fortunate I was. Yeah. And, but I don't think that necessarily, if anything, it impacted me in a way where I realized that I had to give up all that kind of entitlement thing when I was in my late 20s, early 30s. It's like, dude, you have to be, junior. You're not Bob Thiele Sr., you're Bob Thiele Jr. Right. And you better figure out who Junior is.
Yeah. And that leads me into the question I get to on this show with everybody. Through your career, through changing paths, through, all the hardship, all the success, what fuels you to keep going, to keep creating, and to keep wanting to put it out into the world?
Coffee.
Every time I get a raise for that. Every time.
Yeah.
Just
Okay.
kidding.
Good. Yeah. No, I mean, what fuels me is, is just it's. I could tell you what wouldn't fuel me is doing some sort of like, cop drama where they want something that somebody else could do a lot better than
Right.
and I'm saying, oh, we're going to give you the gig, but what fuels me is the idea of doing something that I didn't necessarily feel that I could do, but it was inherent in me, and I created something somewhat beyond the scope of my limitations. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah.
it's always expanding, even if it's like just infinitesimal fraction, but it's just going like somewhere where I can look at what I did and go like, wow, that was cool. I did something beyond the scope. And what's funny really is that I'm not interested, once I do it, I'm not interested in hearing it again. Like, hey, did you, I don't really watch the episodes because what I'll do is I'll get too self-conscious. I'll say like, I'll start becoming critical. I'll start complaining about the way it was mixed or, I just don't want to know it. It's sort of like, here it is. I've done it and I give it, it's yours now. I don't want to own this in the sense of like be territorial and go, look it. It's more like, what's next rather than what was. I want to know what's next.
Man, that's awesome. That's awesome. I think that at the core is what good creation really is. It's not about what that is. It's create it, put it out there, and get on to that next creation.
Well, as you're saying, that's awesome, I'm going like, I have no idea what I just said. No, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm sort of like going from this place and I'm kind of interested in knowing what I just said because I know it came from here. But at the same time, I probably will not watch this because I'm not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm sort of like, I'm letting this go. But I hope, and I don't care if somebody's watching and goes like, what the fuck is he talking about? That's like, what an idiot. I don't care. It's not really, I'm not speaking to anyone. I'm just speaking from my own experience. And trying to be as open and honest and not, have any sort of preconceived notion or script. You're asking me a question. I don't know what the question is, and I'm going to try and answer it like, intuitively and intrinsically from here rather than from here. Because I'm not good from here.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I've absolutely enjoyed being able to ask you these questions because I think this has been an incredible conversation. I want to ask, and this is always the terrible question, because who cares about social media? But do you use social media at all? Can people follow your journey?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, I tend to be like kind of sporadic and I'm not particularly good at self-promoting. I mean, for instance, I saw somehow I saw a clip of Aretha Franklin singing Say a Little Prayer the other day, and it was a live version. And I'd never seen it before, and it completely blew me away. And I remember, when I was, about 15, about maybe 16, I had a summer job at Atlantic Records studio in New York, kind of sweeping up the floors and wrapping mic cables and doing shit like that. And, Aretha was around then. And that was, like 72. And that was 71, 72. And that was like a really incredible period for Aretha. And it also impacted me a lot. And studio musicians like Purdy and Cornell Dupree and Chuck Rainey were there. And those guys have ever since been my but anyway, when I saw this, I was just like blown away because it was probably the most beautiful, the most perfect, the most just staggering thing I'd ever seen Aretha do. And I posted it. So that's what, it's sort of like, or then I see some ridiculous thing by, our president, and I'll post that. Or then I'll see, it's just like, I just do what I feel like doing, and I don't really have a social media, what you would call, I guess, a
plan or a presence, a playbook.
Yeah, playbook. Whereas my son is really good at it. So that's why I'm on social media too, is just to see his shenanigans.
Awesome.
He's pretty great. So, but yeah, we have a Facebook page that I wish somebody else would take more charge of. We have and I have Instagram and all that stuff, but
cool.
You'll probably unfollow me as much as you follow me.
I'll put all that in the show, though.
Okay.
I can't thank you enough for taking time and talking with me.
It's my pleasure, man. I love, it's kind of a treat to be able to talk like this, because it reminds me a lot of, how fortunate I am. It also reminds me of the struggle, the highs, the lows, all that stuff. And, it's just some self-reflection. And, I think self-reflection is really important.
Yeah.
Best done, with another individual. So like, this is like a 45-minute therapy session that I don't have to pay for, because I got to talk about myself for a while.
Exactly. And I just got to say, finally, if you need help linking those Scrantones track or leaking them, I'm in. I'll help you.
Maybe today you've inspired me to just dig them up and send them out to the, stay tuned. Maybe we'll find something. Okay?
I love it. Okay,
man.
Excellent.
All right.
Thank you so much.
It's great talking to you, man.
It was great talking with you, too.
This has been Fueled by Deathcast, a Death Wish Coffee Company podcast production. Thanks for listening.